everyone, it's Helen here. Today we're looking at a heating embossing technique that I absolutely love, and it's going to be using an embossing folder from my new collection, Through the Trees. It's a fab embossing folder. As you can see, it's so much fun. Also, VIPs get 10% off, and make sure you stay to the end for some more beautiful samples. So the black ice effect is one of my favourite heat embossing techniques. Now I've got a few here to show you that don't include using the embossing folder. It's literally just stamping and the technique used, and this one here is again another embossing folder that I made last year. I absolutely love this one, it's stunning. So you're going to be needing just some basic supplies for heat embossing. So I have my Watermark Versamark, which is basically a clear embossing pad. This one is for my dirty work, and we also have a StazOn in jet black. This is for sticking onto like shiny surfaces. Absolutely perfect. And we're also going to be needing some gold mirror cardstock, some clear heat embossing powder, and also some gold embossing powder too. And of course your heat gun. So here is the embossing folder. This is a 3D one, so it's slightly thicker, so you'll need to go through your sandwich for your particular machine for the 3D ones. Okay, so we're going to be showing you this one first, which is the brighter one with the one step skipped, so we can get our embossing folder and run it straight through with our mirror card. Okay, so this piece of mirror card measures 4.75 by 4.75 inches, so 4 3/4 basically. I'm just going to run that through. So here is our embossed gold mirror card. It's looking really nice and textured now, and on the back it sort of reminds me of the wood chip from the 80s. You know that wallpaper? We had that in our house everywhere. Right, so let's grab our StazOn ink. I'm going to use my glass mat. If I get any of this on there, I will have to clean it off with some special cleaner, but if you want to put a piece of paper under your work, you can do. Now I'm just going to rub this, keep it straight and flat. I'm just going to rub that, and it's just going to hit the embossed areas that are raised. There we go, there is our first step done. That is how you get that brightness. Now let's move on to our second piece, where I'm going to show you how to do that extra step. Right, so grab your StazOn again, and we're going to keep it as flat as possible, and we're going to drag it across just like that, and you can see we get some lines there and some distressing. Now I'm keeping it all in one direction at the moment, but you can go in different directions if you want. I kind of want a little bit of black edging around the edges. I am being very careful here. This is going on quite a slick surface, so I'm literally just using my fingernails here. So there we have our little distressed area. I always keep this plastic thing on there as well, because this is an alcohol based pad, and I want that to, or a solvent based pad, I want that to stay juicy. Right, so let's run that through with the embossing folder next. So again, you can see I've already been experimenting and playing, so we're just going to pop that on. And you can get StazOn cleaner if you want to just clean all of that off as well. So let's run that through. There we go. And that looks a lot different to the first one that we did. Okay, let's do a quick close-up and comparison. There we go. This is the one that's slightly brighter, and this one, as it's got a bit more inking in the indents, it's just, or the debossed areas, it just looks a little bit duller and pulled back. Right, so now for adding the icy bit. This is really easy. You just need a Watermark stamp pad, which is just a clear embossing pad, and we're going to be working on both of these at the same time, I'd say. And you'll also be needing your clear embossing powder and your heat tool. I like to decant that stuff into little pots because I cannot be bothered with pieces of paper. So all of my main colours that I use, I just do that. So let's do the Watermark, and I'm just going to go over very lightly, just in patches. There we go. You can leave a few patches clear if you want to. And then I'm just going to go in with my heat embossing powder. I like to use just a little plastic spoon, and then tap that off. It can be as patchy as you want. And if there are areas where you did have the embossing ink on there, it will just dry off if it doesn't have any powder on there. Okay, so I have left a few areas bare. So let's get in there now with the heat tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this on and let it to heat up for a little while. Okay, and as you can see, you get a slightly more textured look to this. This just gives it that little bit of extra texture on top of all of your embossing bits. And I do have a little bit of extra, little bit of a white misty patch there. That's where the powder hasn't gone quite as well. So I'm going to quickly go over it again with the gun. There we go, that's much better. So repeat the same with the other piece. Okay, and here are my two finished pieces. Let me know which one you prefer. So whilst we're doing all of the inking, the next thing I'm going to do is the sentiments. So I'm using the Through the Trees A5 stamp set. This is lovely. I love this as well. I cannot wait to do more samples with this one. But today we're going to be using the Christmas and the Happy. I've got them mounted here. Going to be using some heat embossing with the Happy and some stays on with the Christmas. So I have a little strip here of gold mirror cardstock. I'm just going to load that up with ink and then stamp two, because I'm making 2 cards, so I can batch these up. It doesn't matter if it's slightly patchy because it kind of adds to the look. There we go. So what I'm going to do next is leave that just a few moments to dry whilst we work on our stags. So I've got 2 stags here. So those stags are from the 5x7 Portrait Diorama Woodland Scene Builder die set. That's a mouthful, but don't be confused by the size of this envelope, because look at all of these dies. You get 26 dies. Some of them are joined together, so it's 29 elements. And there's loads in here. Snowdrifts, trees, branches. These are going to be absolutely perfect for popping together your diorama cards. So we're going to be using some more heat embossing with this one, and I'm just going to quickly pop on some powder. I couldn't find it, I was looking everywhere for it. So just a little bit of powder here. I like to use this little brush one when I'm using black cardstock, because I find the little pillow powder brush pad thing leaves too much on the black cardstock and it can be really difficult to get off. So I'm going to be going straight back to my Versamark and just stamping the Happy along here. And I'll be using some gold heat embossing powder on that. So let's quickly tidy up. See, this is what happens if you don't tidy up as you go along. Right, this is my gold. Please don't ask me what brand this is, because I long ago decanted this into my little box. It was probably a tonic one, I think, most likely. Okay, so those are our little Happy stags. Let's move those aside and bring this back in now. It's had a little bit of time to dry, so I'm just going to go over with some Versamark over the top. This is going to add that little bit of ice texture that we are going for, and then I'm going to use some clear embossing folder. Okay, again, set that aside. And now we can start assembling. So here I have 2 5x7 cards. I've made these from black cardstock. Now these are quite curly, so you can always bend them back the other way, but I don't really want to cause any extra tears. So what I'm going to quickly do is just grab just any old double-sided tape from my stash. And this isn't here to hold this long term. This is just to keep it flat whilst the glue dries, because these are going to want to lift and curl at the sides. First from the embossing folder, giving it a good squish, and then secondly from the heat embossing, that can cause a bit of curly bits too. And then just put one on the side. Now usually I would say with double-sided tape would be to put or to use a bone folder to squish everything down to be able to get this contact paper off. I'm not going to say to do that this time because this is embossed, so we don't want to squash anything. So just do your best to try and get your backing off here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a bit of extra glue over the top of the tape, just a little bit, and that should keep it there for the long term. Now it's perfectly fine to add glue on top of your double-sided tape, and if you have the extra time and patience you can even move ahead and use the red double-sided tape, but that does mean getting your scissors out. Okay, so from my offcuts I had enough here to make my little borders for behind, so let's glue those together. And then I want to add extra dimension to this, so I'm just going to use some double-sided foam pads here. I think CraftStash also do these in black as well, so if you're working with the darker colours it's going to be perfect for that. Now before I pop the stag down properly, I'm just going to do a quick dry round just to place him there, and then I need to trim out my little sentiment here. And then I'm just going to get my placement in the right place before I put everything down. And again, I'm going to be using the foam pads. I'll be trimming those down to the right size. So we'll pop this one just there. I'm happy with that. Okay, so let's trim this down. So I'll have a little pad here for the sentiment. And then the other bit there can go behind the stag body. I'm going to take these both off at the same time and try and position them more or less at the same time just to get the correct placement. And there we have our first one. The sun has really come out. Let's close that window. That's better. So here is our first one here. So let me quickly pop this one together exactly the same as how I've done this, and then we can have a look. So here we have 4 cards ready to be sent out this Christmas. So I hope you really enjoyed this technique. Again, this technique is called the black ice technique, and I've used it with embossing folders, and it's just as stunning if you use it without the embossing folder as well. So thank you very much for joining me today, and I'll see you again next time.